Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show. I am Joe, and I'm your host every Tuesday evening right here on WNRI 99.9 on the FM dial, 1380 on the AM dial, and of course, streaming 24/7 at WNRI.com. We also rebroadcast this show on Saturdays at 1 p.m., so if you can't listen to the whole show tonight, you can catch it on Saturday once again, and you can also, of course, catch it on WNRI.com streaming at that time. Okay, so tonight, the topic of tonight's show is the hidden price killers. What can reduce your home's value before you even list it? But before we get to that, I want to just kind of, track. We've been tracking, mortgage rates for years, okay, going to my trusty Mortgage News Daily, and the 30-year fixed rate this week is 6.39, the 30-year FHA 5.88, and the VA 5.9. So folks, two of the three rates are below 6%. Things are settling down a bit, and in fact, oil, we're going to start tracking oil as well. Oil is lower this week. It's down to $4.40 a gallon. I believe last week it was $4.59, and I know a week or two before that it was $4.95. And I'm quoting the price for A-Star Oil. That's the distributor, the delivery company, and I'm getting that number from, NewEnglandOil.com, and I'm selecting the Northern Rhode Island section of the state, so we get, those are the prices. You get that group of prices, and I use A-Star Oil, so I just quote their price just to keep it simple. So oil is down. Home heating oil is down from where it was. This morning before I went to work, I saw that crude oil, I think, was just at a touch over $100 a barrel. I know it had gone up much higher than that before. It went down into the 90s, so it's going to be kind of helter-skelter for the foreseeable future until everything, settles down in Iran and everything with the Strait of Hormuz gets, squared away. I just want to point out something that's kind of annoying is that most of the oil, I think only 1% of our oil comes from the Middle East, comes from the Strait of Hormuz. And despite that, as soon as things happen, something changes, the price of oil at the, that you pay from your home heating oil company and the price of gas at the pump goes up the next day. Now, the oil that's in those tanks was purchased a long time before we encountered, these sudden changes. So, it's, I don't know why that is, other than to say that, capitalism, people are getting as much as they can. Because there's demand, they're going to pay, they're going to get a higher price for the oil. But, the higher prices that we at least initially paid, or even maybe now are paying, probably aren't related to the actual incursion into Iran, because we don't get our oil from them. So it's kind of a little annoying that this happens. But hey, it's, the way I'm looking at it is short-term pain, and hopefully this will resolve so that we have a long-term gain of lower prices, and everyone around the world is paying the same amount for oil. Okay. All right, so that being said, let's get into some real estate. So the hidden price killers, what is it that can reduce your home's value before you even list it? All right. So this is one of those things that quietly can cost consumers, cost homeowners tens of thousands of dollars. And most people don't even realize it until it's too late. So just to kind of give you some perspective, we're still in a situation where we have low inventory. We're in a low inventory market, about a month and a half of inventory in the state of Rhode Island. Southern Mass is similar. So sellers have leverage. But buyers, as we've said before, are still selective and cautious. They're more pragmatic. They're stretching financially, okay? And what I want to point out here is that when people are buying a home, they're not looking at the ultimate purchase price of the home. They're looking at the monthly payment. Because a lot of people are coming from renting. And if they're renting a house paying $2,500 a month, all right, how much more do I have to pay so that I can own my own home? Or maybe I can save money. So assuming they have to pay a little bit more to purchase a home, they're stretching financially. Okay? They're paying attention to mortgage interest rates. Okay, and that's why I wanted to point out the 2 of the 3 rates I quoted are below 6%. Okay, and now ARMs are adjustable rate mortgages. Those are also below 6%. Now an ARM it adjusts. Okay, so you get a 7-year, 6-year adjustable rate mortgage. That means it can go up or down every so often. The rate on that today is 5.98. Okay, it's usually about a point higher than the FHA rate. So sometimes some people are saying, you know what, I'm going to roll the dice. I'm going to get an adjustable rate mortgage to get a lower rate. The only other way you can get a lower rate is if you get a 15-year mortgage, but now your payments are going to be a lot higher. Okay, and that's only 5.96, so it's still not as low as the VA loan or the FHA loan. Okay, so buyers are watching interest rates, and they're trying to learn more. That's why I try to provide a lot of information to home buyers that are listening to this show or checking it out on YouTube. Okay, one thing that I'm seeing, and the data appears to support this as well, is that buyers are less tolerant of, air quotes, projects. Okay, maybe they'll go into a home and they will do some minor work, but they don't want to do anything major. They don't want to have to put in a whole new kitchen, put a roof on. They don't want to do big things like that. So they're looking at houses that are easy peasy, as I like to say, something that's move-in ready, maybe needs some paint, maybe needs new, floors cleaned up, stuff they can do a little at a time. Okay. Now, I like to talk about all this because my job as a realtor is not just to sell your house or to sell you a home. My job when I'm representing sellers is to protect your equity, and buyers, I'm helping you maximize equity on your purchase. So some of the things we're talking about tonight for sellers are ways for them or for you to protect your equity. Okay, and sometimes you have to spend a little money to make money. So one of the things that we've talked about in the past is curb appeal, because most people look for homes online, and many times they're looking for it on a digital device. Sometimes it might be as small as this, my iPhone. So that means they're looking at a photograph that's 1 inch by 1 inch. And it's very important to have your home represented with quality photos, and for the product of those photos, okay, to be quality. So curb appeal is the first thing we need to talk about. And some curb appeal can hurt value. All right. One of the things that people don't think about are trees too close to the house. If you have trees that are overhanging the house, so the roof is covered by branches in the summer, not a good thing. If you have a situation where branches are actually not just close to the house but are touching the house, think about that. Every time the wind blows, those branches rub back and forth. So they're rubbing against the roof shingles, or they're rubbing against the siding. Additionally, the closer the branches are to your house, the easier it is for critters to get on your house or perhaps in your eaves. Okay, so these are the things you want to, pay attention to when you're just looking at the vegetation around the house. And then, of course, something else, and I want to do a quick aside on this. When I was a kid, you would watch these movies or these shows that take place in England, and they have all of this nice ivy growing up the walls of the buildings, and it looks so hoity-toity and so nice. And as I get older, yes, okay, it does look nice, but that's terrible for your house, because that vegetation grows up your house, and the roots reach into whatever surface they're on. So if it's brick, they're going to be reaching into the mortar between the bricks and loosening the mortar. Okay, so that can be problematic. And it's also a problem because you're going to have bugs that close to your home, insects. Usually we don't want insects that close to your home. Okay, and the same thing is true with trees and tree branches. Of course, in rural areas like I live in Cumberland, Cumberland, Smithfield, parts of Lincoln, North Smithfield, etc. You have to worry about powder post beetles in addition to termites. Okay, so trees touching or overhanging the house. Some of the things that I see when I'm walking through a house with my buyers are potential existence or creation of roof damage. As I mentioned already, moisture issues, because if the sun doesn't, when it's at its peak or at some point during the day, it can't hit your roof surface, there's going to be moisture on the roof for a long period of time after it rains. Okay. And then again, of course, as I mentioned, pests. I mean, you get squirrels, they can, burrow through things, make holes in wood, they, can squeeze themselves to be really small and get through cracks and crevices, and the next thing you know, you've got critters in your attic running around at night when you're trying to sleep. And then, of course, at the other end of a tree, you have root systems. Now, roots have been known to lift walkways, lift driveways, crack foundations, okay? Because what they do is, okay, so let's say, and humor me here, you have a downspout falls away or isn't directly under the gutter drain where it's supposed to be. So now, or the downspout is, but then at the bottom it just drops right down into the ground. So you have water going down through the ground up against your foundation. So water is the universal solvent, so it always finds a way in. And what happens here, because it gets cold, if water works its way in and then it freezes, water expands when it freezes. So now that little bit of water makes its way into the foundation. And over time, it cracks. And now what happens is, once there is an opening there, tree roots can also go into that crack. And also, tree roots will follow water. So if you have water that's draining from your downspouts around your foundation, the tree roots are going to go around your foundation. What they've also been known to do is to get into drains and sewer pipes. So if they just get into a drain from your downspout that's underground, maybe that's not that big of a deal. But if they get into your sewer line, that is a big deal, and that is expensive. Okay? So when buyers are looking at a house, if they're working with a good realtor, like yours truly, not to toot my own horn, they don't see shade when they see trees in close proximity to your house or overhanging your roof. They see liability. And oh, by the way, your insurance company is also going to see it as a potential liability. So what happens? This prompts an immediate mental discount by buyers. Depending on the house and the perception hit, it could be anywhere from $5,000 to $25,000 just from the trees. And if it's really significant, it could trigger lender concerns if the appraiser makes note of it, which could prompt insurance problems. So folks, if you're a seller, pay attention to this. Overgrown landscaping can also block natural light, make homes feel smaller, and it suggests neglect. A quick rule of thumb: if a buyer cannot see the house clearly from the street, they assume that things are either being deliberately hidden or there are things that aren't good that they can't see. Okay? Now, we talked about the problem with water, moisture around the house and roots, and if you have any problems like that, okay, what you need to do is you need to call Vern Rainville. Why? Because Vern is a public insurance adjuster. He works for you, not the insurance company. And call Vern before you call the insurance company, because you may call Vern at 484-300-8495, and he may say, you don't have a claim here. Your policy is not going to cover this. But if you called your insurance company, every time you call your insurance company or the agent, notes are taken. And then when your policy comes up for review, all of those notes are reviewed. So call Vern before you call your insurance company, because even if it's not a claim, you don't want it being a strike against you as a homeowner. 484-300-8495. Vern Rainville, licensed by the state of Rhode Island. All calls returned within 24 hours. Okay, and you need to have a good public insurance adjuster. You need to have a good insurance company. I'm actually meeting with some folks tomorrow about insurance, and also you need to have good representation with a solid title and escrow company like Compass Title and Escrow. Anthony Betancourt, his attorneys and paralegals, they do a great job taking care of our clients. They're right in Lincoln, right off of 116, and plenty of parking. They can help you if you're looking to become an investor. You want to have an LLC. You want to put your home into a trust, life estate, anything like that. They are the ones that can help you. Compass Title and Escrow. You have to give them a call, and all you have to do, of course, you certainly can reach out to me, but if you give them a call at 401-379-7778, and they will take good care of you. That's 401-379-7778. Okay, hold on, folks, because we have a caller right here, so bear with me. Let's see. Hello, caller. Thank you for calling in. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Commodities and things of that nature. Is it wise to take your options and pay down or pay off the HELOC, and then perhaps even own the house outright, or at least reduce the amount of the HELOC? I only ask because home prices increase quite a bit every year.
Right. Mm-hmm. That is a very custom question, and what I mean by that is, one, you need to look at tax implications if you were to pay it off. Okay, you paid off, you don't have a payment, but then you don't have the deduction on your the mortgage interest deduction. So that is something to consider, and then also if you're There are some folks, again, it depends. If you're retired, that's one thing. If you're still in earning money and you're going to continue to increase, presumably earning money for the next 5 or 10 or 15 years, that's a different situation. But if you're living off of, interest in stocks and bonds and things like that, that's another scenario. So, a home equity line of credit, one, you may have it and you may not have taken any money out against it, so you just have a potential for a $100,000 or $50,000 line of credit that you could lean on if you needed that. Or some folks, they, use all the money. Um, I don't know what your situation is. You don't have to share that. And I just always advise people, when you're doing something like that, if you're taking money out using a HELOC, put it to good use. Don't spend it on a vacation or something like that, because it's you're paying for it for 15, 20, 30 years. Right. Well, I mean, are you in a situation where every year you have to pay tax, income tax to the government? Okay, so then you don't need the mortgage interest tax deduction. So then I would, yeah, in that case, you probably would be better off owning it free and clear. Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye bye. All right. Unique question. Of course, right around the 15th, that has some relevance as well. Okay, so just getting back, so we were talking about the things that can impact your home, and if you had thought you had a claim, don't call the insurance company. Call Vern Rainville, 484-300-8495, because even if you don't have a claim and you call the insurance company, they are going to record it and mark it down that you made that call. Okay. Next, deferred maintenance issues. Deferred maintenance issues are these directly um, impact curb appeal. Okay, um, peeling paint. Okay, or when there's no paint, or just having moss growing on your siding. You could have beautiful white siding, but if it's all covered in you know grime and moss, it's not going to look good. That type of thing that the buyer isn't going to say, "Oh, I could do that in a weekend with with a power washer and take it off." No, they're going to look at it and say, "Oh, that's going to cost me $5,000." All of these things typically start off in the calculation that buyers do $1,000. So, I had a situation a couple of years ago where a seller was listing their house, and the siding, the clapboard siding on the side of the house, it was popping out. The nails had, backed out, and the siding was, some areas were splitting, and it wasn't a lot. It was maybe like, I don't know, 5 or 10 pieces. But if I'm looking at that as a buyer agent, I'm going to say, who knows what's under that? That could be a big problem why those are backing out. We're going to ask for $5,000, credit. Or if the homeowner could be a handyman and replace all that stuff him or herself, or pay someone $500 to $1,000 to do it, you're saving the potential for a buyer to ask you to take $5,000 off the price. Okay, little things like that make a big difference. Something else, windows. Okay, a lot of folks, they will have their home vinyl sided, and they don't have the windows done, or the siding comes off the windows, and you see underneath, you see the wood frame of the window that it's got a lot of dry rot, or maybe it has, there were bugs that ate it, or maybe the water just ate away at the wood. Something else that can really detract from the value of your home, that could be easily rectified. I'm talking with someone, we're going to be listing his house in a few weeks, and the house looks good, but around the windows there's just some peeling paint. So I said, you know what, just scrape it, paint it nice and easy, because that will get flagged by the appraiser if it's an FHA buyer or a VA buyer or a USDA buyer. Okay. So sometimes, if there's a little bit of peeling paint and it's high up on the house, they won't see that, or they won't flag it. But if it's peeling paint on every windowsill, that typically gets flagged by appraisers. And they'll just say, okay, this has to be dealt with before we can give a mortgage commitment to the buyer. So I tell everybody, just look, take care of it ahead of time so we don't have a surprise 2 weeks before closing. Okay? Because the other thing is, too, 2 weeks before closing, this is New England, we could have 2 weeks of rain, so now all of a sudden you have to push the closing out 2 weeks because you couldn't scrape and paint because it was too wet. So it's always better to take care of these things ahead of time. There are some times you have home where you'll have a lovely home, and then you'll have an ugly driveway. Okay? Now, an ugly driveway is different from the driveway that I have, which I call a redneck driveway. But an ugly driveway is, if there are just stains on it, or, if it's an asphalt driveway, if there are like oil stains on it, or even if it's a concrete driveway with oil stains, that doesn't look good. Get it cleaned up. If it's uneven, if there are cracks. The nice thing about asphalt driveways is you can seal them. You just pay someone, or you can do it yourself if you want to ruin some shoes and some clothes, and seal it yourself. If you did that already a year or two ago and there are cracks, make sure you fill those cracks in, because again, what that does is not only does it look better, it prevents further deterioration of your driveway, and psychologically the buyer says, oh, they take care of their house. They're not letting everything slide. They're staying on it. And when I see a house that's well maintained, I advise my clients, because it may not appraise for more than a house that's not so well maintained, but it's the same in every other way. So go for the one that's well maintained, because you will have fewer surprises down the road, and any work you do, in all likelihood, will be less expensive. So some of the key issues you want to pay attention to are peeling paint, rotting trim, either dry rot or water rot, missing shingles on the side or on the roof, and cracked walkways, especially if they're uneven. Because what buyers think is, if this is what I can see, imagine what I can't see. And that's something I always tell my buyers. Pay attention to these little red flags, because if they don't take care of the stuff you can see, imagine what you can't see. And the same thing when you go through a house and it's a flip. Oh, you see brand new flooring and quartz countertops and new cabinets and stainless steel appliances in the kitchen. But then you go to turn the light switch on and it's loose underneath. Or the plugs are not secured properly. Alright, if they're doing that with the stuff that I can see and that I'm going to touch, imagine what's behind the walls. Which is why I like to go to the basement and look at everything in the basement. Okay? Sellers, pay attention. This is very important. Or homeowners. Deferred maintenance doesn't just cost the price of the repair. It costs you trust. The trust of the buyer and the buyer's agent. Small issues signal bigger hidden problems, as I say. Buyers invariably inflate repair estimates and assume worst-case scenarios, especially if it's a first-time buyer. They don't know. So they're going to assume the worst-case scenario. So what does this mean? What's the real impact? A $2,000 fix could mean a $10,000 price reduction in the buyer's mind. So you shouldn't be surprised when you receive an offer and you're wondering why you're taking a haircut on the offer price. All right, next let's move to the inside of the house. stains, okay? There could be something, when your kids were little, they overflowed the bathtub on the second floor 15 years ago, and now there's a stain on the ceiling in the living room. Nothing's happened since. Everything drains properly, but there's still that darn stain on the ceiling. What the buyer is going to see, and their agent, is, oh, they have water problems. If water leaked through there, maybe there's mold inside there. I don't know, that could be dangerous. And then you talk to the agent, oh, that was something that happened 15 years ago. Did they ever deal with the moisture inside and the insulation on the inside of the sheetrock? Probably not. So there could be mold there. Paint the ceiling. Costs you one afternoon, one evening. Pay someone a couple $100, and now you don't have the problem. Who knows what the condition is inside there? Okay? Who knows? But when I'm representing a homeowner who wants to sell his or her home, my job, I have a fiduciary obligation to that homeowner to help them get within the bounds of the law and the code of ethics, to help them get maximum value from the sale of their home. Now, I only deal in what I know. I can't speculate what something could be. Even if let's say in my example, we saw some kind of black stuff on the edge of those stains. I don't know that that's mold. It could be just a microbial growth that has nothing to do with mold. So that's why when I talk about things like this, and pretty much every home inspector, word choice is very important. Of course, the other way to look at it is if you're buying or selling. If I'm selling, it's microbial growth, I don't know what it is. If I'm buying, I'm like, well, that looks like it could be mold. Do you want to pay to have it tested, Mr. Seller, to prove me wrong? And then usually they say no, because they don't really want to know. So then we negotiate something out to the benefit of both parties. Okay? Other things on the inside of the house. Okay, folks, this is a huge one. And it won't cost you anything. It won't take a lot of time. Don't leave your home. Don't let your home be shown if it looks like a whirling dervish just ran through your home, or a Tasmanian devil. And I'm thinking of specific images where there's clothing everywhere, beds aren't made, the toilets are dirty, the toilet seat's up. You don't want that. It doesn't take a lot to prepare the house. And what I do to my client with my sellers is I say, all right, look, why don't we do this? Let's set up 2 times during the week when we're going to have showings. So that way, we'll only schedule showings during those times. So you don't have to worry that I'm going to call you up today and say, hey, can we do a showing tonight? Because we agreed it's going to be Wednesday nights and Saturday afternoons, or Sunday afternoons and Thursday nights. So you make sure the house is clean on those days. If we have showings, great. If we don't, okay, then you clean the house. I'm kind of chuckling to myself as I remember back in the day when we had to deal with so many bank-owned properties, foreclosed properties, and many times they were just like full of debris, like mattresses, tires, toys, food, just crazy. And then in addition to everything else that we just talked about, of course, those houses many times had water stains on the ceilings. You'd have smells, which makes you, think about mold, okay, if you have musty odors. A lot of times you'd have old electrical panels that were rusty on the inside and the outside. Worn carpets, dated finishes on floors. And as I said, clutter and overcrowded rooms. Those are things that, the last one, those are easy to fix. Clutter and overcrowded rooms. It doesn't cost any money. Because remember, homeowners, buyers don't just buy what they see, they buy how they feel. Home buying, residential real estate, is a subjective, it's not just objective like commercial real estate. Commercial real estate, if the numbers make sense, I like the fundamentals, great, let's buy it. When you're buying a home to live in, that's not the case. Okay, a friend of mine says the house has to hug you. All right, house can't hug anyone if it's falling apart or it's full of clutter. Some of the other things, psychologically that you have to be concerned about is clutter creates a smaller space in the buyer's mind. Odor means potential health concerns. Oh, is this mold? My son has allergies. I have allergies. Stains, as we said, ceiling stains, or even worse yet, stains in the wall. Future expense. Why is there a stain in the wall? Maybe there must be a pipe in the wall that's leaking. Okay, so these are the things that you need to think about. Folks, if you're just tuning in, you are listening to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show right here on WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 on the AM dial, streaming 24/7 on WNRI.com. And this show, the Joe Luca Real Estate Show, is played again Saturday afternoon at 1 o'clock. If you'd like to check the show out online, I have a YouTube channel, Rhode Island Homes by Joe Luca. Check it out, and you'll be able to see not only recordings of the Joe Luca Real Estate Show, but also lots of other videos that I put up from 20 seconds all the way 3 to 5 minute videos. And the radio show, this is my long one, just a little under an hour. All right, so the next thing that homeowners that you want to pay attention to are the mechanical systems and big ticket items, because there are systems that the buyers have a huge fear of. Okay, and some of the images I want you to think about are those old snowmen boilers from the teens, 20s, 30s. They were boilers completely encapsulated in asbestos that was white. Okay, think of ratty old abandoned oil tanks. Okay, that may or may not have oil in them, that may or may not leak out at some point. Think about knob and tube wiring or fuses in your electrical panel, your electric box. These are things that can be addressed beforehand, and believe me, it's much less costly. Aging roof is something else, and then plumbing issues. Now, knob and tube. So, knob and tube is essentially where you have exposed wire that's run along, the floor joists or the insides of the house, and then there are porcelain knobs. Okay, and the wires run through these porcelain tubes that go through these porcelain knobs, and it's pretty efficient, but it's ungrounded, number one, and number two, appraisers will make note of that, and some insurers will not insure the house with knob and tube. So what you need to do is, if you have knob and tube, you need to give me a call, because I will connect you with give you the names of electricians who can take care of it ahead of time. So if you're taking care of it ahead of time, you will remove the knob and tube wiring. It will be replaced. There will be appropriate circuit breakers put in plugs or in the panel. But the knob and tube that's inside the walls does not have to be changed. But if you're buying and you see knob and tube, you're going to get a price to have everything removed, which let's say is going to be $30,000, when maybe you could get it done the other way for $5,000. okay? And again, you're not just circumventing it, doing it, the Mickey Mouse way. You have a licensed electrician doing this, so it's up to code, okay? Because you do not want to do things that are going to burn the house down or expose anyone to potential electrical risk. So if you have knob and tube, you'd like to figure out how to deal with it, give me a call, 401-409-5030. You can also text me, 401-409-5030, Joe Luca, Luca. And if you want to send me your email address too, and then I will email everything out to you. Okay, I'll give you a couple of people to reach out to. You can talk to them, ask them questions, get prices. When I refer people, consumers or clients, to my vendor partners, if it's home inspectors, if it's lenders, if it's attorneys, if it's electricians, plumbers, whomever it is, I have no idea what the charges are. All I know is this person does a good job, they're fair, they're probably not the most expensive, they're probably not the cheapest. Where they fall in between, I don't know. I stay in my lane, okay? I just know that they're gonna, if you hire them, they will do a good job. They will do what you tell them to do, and it will be done right. Okay. So, folks, so some of these things, let's say if you have an old furnace and it's working fine. Okay, maybe it's not a snowman furnace, but it's a 40 or 50 year furnace, 40 or 50-year-old furnace or boiler. If you have it serviced, what's ideal is if you have a tag on there that shows that every year for the past 15 years it's been serviced. That's awesome. Oil-fired boilers should be serviced every year. Gas every 2 years. So if you have a boiler and you can show on that service tag it's been serviced every year for an oil-fired boiler for the past 5, 10, 15 years, that is money. That's good money. If you don't, get it serviced before you list it, because I guarantee you buyers will notice it, their agent will point it out, and then when you get an offer and you have a home inspection, the home inspector is going to say, oh, there's no tag here, I don't know when this was last inspected, and they're going to make a note, it's an unknown, it's a potential problem. And all of these potential problems add up and create a break in the bond of trust that you could have had between buyer and seller. Plumbing issues, if you have any drips, the pipes in the basement, that if you have any valves that are leaking or corrosion or anything like that, have it addressed sooner before you list your home. Again, I can refer you to people who can help you with this, 401-409-5030, people that understand that this is a small job. They're not going to charge you $20,000 to do a small job, okay? People, in other words, real estate people that understand what I'm trying to help my clients do. Because remember, when it comes to real estate, surprises are never good, and buyers don't want surprises after closing. So what they do is they'll price in the risk before they even make an offer. And that goes in the back of their head, and they'll look at other houses, and they may have 3 houses that they looked at and they like, but that house had a thingamajiggy that was not looking good and hadn't been maintained well. Let's look at these other 2 and see which one we can put an offer in on. That's the calculus that goes on in a home buyer's mind. Okay? Now, sometimes these issues can have an impact on financing. As I alluded to earlier, it can impact, the appraiser can point things out, and now all of a sudden the house doesn't qualify for FHA or VA or USDA financing. You have a buyer that's all they can qualify for is an FHA loan. Now what's going to happen? The house is going back on the market. It goes back on the market, people are going to say, oh, what happened? That went pending, or that went off the market, they went under contract and now came back on the market after the inspection. What's wrong with it, Joe? Well, there's nothing other than it didn't qualify for FHA. These are the types of things I advise my clients about before we list the house to minimize the chance that we have this kind of a surprise. Because things like this can shrink the pool of buyers, of potential buyers. If it shrinks the pool of potential buyers, again, Economics 101, supply and demand, the more demand with the fixed supply, your house, you're going to get a higher price for it. So you want to attract as many potential buyers to your home as possible. Some things that can make a strong positive signal right up front: clean gutters. Don't let plants grow out of your gutters. Don't let it be apparent that there are leaves in your gutters. Or when it rains, the water overflows your gutters. It doesn't go down the downspouts. A fresh coat of paint goes a long way. At the very least, on your front door. Make sure your garage doors aren't decrepit. Make sure the garage doors work. HVAC system, have it serviced, just like your boiler. And if you have maintenance records, just like your car, when you go to sell a car, if you have maintenance records when you're selling your car, a potential buyer is going to feel more comfortable. There's more trust there. And then updated system. So get rid of the knob and tube, get rid of the fuses and the electrical panel. Heaven forbid, if you hopefully don't have any lead pipes, you have at least PEX or copper. Because a well-maintained home doesn't just sell faster, it sells with confidence. Okay? Things to pay attention to: strong maintenance history, because it reduces buyer anxiety, leads to stronger offers with fewer inspection concessions. So I have a buyer. We put a house for her. She's a first-time home buyer under contract a little over a week ago. It's right here in Woonsocket. And it's a sweet little house. And she's, at that tight price point, not a lot available. So we went through the house, and, there are a couple little things, but nothing major. And she said, I really like this house, Joe. What do you think? I said, you know what? I really like it too. It's a cute house. It's in a good neighborhood. It's a quiet street. And there's new construction across the street that's going to help your value. I like this house. She said, I want it. What do I have to do to get this house? I said, if you want the house, let's hit them hard, go right in at asking price. That's what we did. And she's buying the house. Knock on wood. Okay, knock on wood over here. Knock on wood. Helping another first-time home buyer. For her, her husband, and her son. Fantastic. It's one of the most rewarding things to be able to help people with that transaction. Okay, so homeowners. A strong maintenance history reduces buyer anxiety, leads to stronger offers, and will result in fewer inspection concessions. All right. What I like to do is, with my prospective sellers, is a pre-listing walkthrough. Get everything done, then I'll walk through it with you. So you have another set of eyes looking at everything before the buyers come into the house. We look for safety issues, water issues, and structural concerns. Those are the biggies. Okay, take care of those, and you look at also cosmetic updates And then landscaping cleanup, especially this time of year. Rake out the leaves from under the shrubs. Rake out the grass, dethatch the grass. All right? Things you don't have to worry about are minor wear and tear items, personal preference items. Hopefully you don't have anything like, taste-specific things like pink walls. Because if you do, paint them white or some other neutral color. But minor wear and tear, you don't have to worry about that. I always say the best way to control the negotiation is to remove surprises. The best way to control negotiation is to remove surprises. So they don't have anything that they can come back at you and say, oh, Because remember, folks, your home isn't just competing on price. It's competing on confidence. The confidence the buyer would have if they were to buy your home. Okay? So folks, if you are thinking about selling now or at some point in the future, I'll walk through your home with you and show you exactly what buyers are going to see before they ever step foot inside. And you might say, well, Joe, I'm not looking to sell my home now. I'm going to be here at least another 3 or 4 years. That's okay, because now if there are some things, you can tackle one item a year. Okay? It's all for good. Because what I do is I make downsizing simple for Rhode Island empty nesters, helping you clear the clutter, sell with confidence, and move into the low maintenance lifestyle that you've been waiting for. All right? So folks, I want to thank you very much for tuning in to the Joe Luca Real Estate Show this week. We will be back next week, same bat time, same bat channel, right here on WNRI 99.9 FM, 1380 AM, and WNRI.com streaming. We broadcast the show again on Saturdays at 1 p.m. Shout out to Vern Rainville, public insurance adjuster extraordinaire, 484-300-8495. Vern Rainville, licensed by the state of Rhode Island. All calls returned within 24 hours. Please give him a call. That's Vern Rainville, 484-300-8495. And Compass Title and Escrow, Anthony Betancourt and his team of attorneys and paralegals do a fantastic job taking care of buyers and sellers. And if you have any questions, and even if you're thinking about, hey, I want to get into being an investor. All right, that's awesome. You should probably talk about setting up an LLC first. So give them a call at 401-379-7770. You can give Camille a call at Compass Title and Escrow. Other than that, we'll be back next week. Take care, everybody. Have an awesome week. Bye-bye. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. Bye-bye.